Yeah. Welcome back, everyone, to another live Mast Cell 360 show. I'm Jamie Fries-Miller, your host and health coach here at Mast Cell 360. And as you can see, I am joined by our lead practitioner, Kimberley Quirk. And today we are going to go over mold and mycotoxin testing, how to test your body and home, because it's important to know, is the mold inside of you, but is the mold in your home also contributing to your health? So we're going to go over all of that today. Whether you're joining us live or catching the replay, though, we're so happy to have you with us. These lives are all about empowering you on your mast cell journey with practical insights, expert guidance, and the support of our amazing community. So please feel free, as you're joining, to drop in the comments where you're tuning in from. We just really love to see how global this community is. Before we get going, just quick disclaimers. Today's show is for informational and educational purposes. This presentation is not meant to treat, diagnose, cure, or prevent illness, so please be sure to discuss any health recommendations with your healthcare provider. Just a reminder that some of the links shared during this presentation or on our website are affiliate links, which means Mast Cell 360 may take a very small commission if you purchase through the links. We only recommend products that we love and use personally or use in the Mast Cell 360 clinic. Your support through our links also help support our free resources such as this weekly show. All right, I see Rose from Baltimore, Maryland, and we have Virginia, Massachusetts, PA. All the East Coast people are up and ready. All right, so just some quick announcements while people continue to join. Oh, Edinburgh, Scotland. Cool. California, Oklahoma. Awesome. Thanks for being with us live today, guys. So just a quick announcement. If you haven't been following us long, we are over on Substack, and this is a great place to have all of our resources all in one area. We do have a free subscription, so there's no need to pay, but there is also a paid tier if you would like to receive some additional exclusive things such as weekly practitioner tips, recipes, early announcement on upcoming courses and offers, things like that. So be sure to check us out at mastcell360.substack.com. And I wanted to let everyone know that because we're talking about mold today, we decided to do a sale on our Precision Mold Masterclass. So be sure to stick around to the end or catch the replay to learn how you can get a nice discount on the course. But you can check it out to see if it's relevant to you at mastcell360.com/mold-course. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about how to test your home, how to test your body, and what the results of each of those tests that we recommend, what they mean, and then what to do next. So what are the next steps after you get those testing done? And I will just say, for those who haven't been following us long, mold is the #1 root trigger we see at the Mast Cell 360 clinic for MCAS. So just keeping that in mind, if you are kind of new to all of this and haven't explored mold at all, this is the right place to be. Okay, Kimberley, I'm going to kick it off to you now to kind of go over some of the symptoms that, could potentially be associated with mold.
Yeah. So the question is, could mold be behind your symptoms? So many people with mold toxicity never see or smell the mold. That was me. Yet it's a root trigger for hundreds of chronic symptoms. So what it can look like for mast cell, it's usually a huge piece. And a piece you don't want to miss because it can be so hidden, but also chronic fatigue, histamine intolerance can sort of be a sort of an earlier sign of kind of what's going on, dysautonomia or POTS, chronic sinusitis, anxiety and depression, immune dysfunction and autoimmunity, fibromyalgia, as well as autoimmunity. There it is, and so much more. So if you have these kinds of conditions, especially if several of them, I mean, I probably had about half of those there myself. You do yourself a favor and make sure you don't miss, testing, because just kind of guessing and saying I don't see mold or I don't think I've ever lived in mold, you might be surprised. Yeah. we see a lot of clients who are sort of surprised when they get their tests back and they realize that this is a piece of it. It's not always the whole thing. It's usually just a piece of it, but it could be a big hidden piece, for, keeping us kind of stuck in that reactive phase.
And two, it could be a place of employment as well. Like we think a lot of times at home, like if we don't see mold in our home or we don't smell mold in our home, but you smell it at work, think about you're spending 8 hours there 5 days a week. That's a huge hit. I know mine, like my main mold exposure was a place of employment. Not to say that my home also didn't have it, but
yeah. It can be the car too. So just know that, like, you spend a lot of time in your car. So just paying attention. And I couldn't smell anything in my house. And I was living in black mold probably. It probably developed while I was there, but a good 8 to 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah. I tell people if you smell mold or see mold, we know that there's a mold problem.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So even
if you don't, doesn't mean it's not there.
Yeah. It's good. I tell clients all the time, I'm like, just because you can't see it or smell it doesn't mean that those mycotoxin piece. I feel like often we kind of interchange mold and mycotoxins a lot in terminology. Right. And so like, it's important to kind of distinguish that the mycotoxins are invisible and scentless. And those are some of the toxins that we're breathing in.
And I have people say, well, it's just mildew. Well, mildew is mold. So know that if mildew's growing, there's the right conditions to also be growing mold.
Yeah. So we're probably jumping ahead of ourselves a little bit, but yeah. So to wrap that up, if you have any of those symptoms that Kimberly just mentioned that are on the slide, start thinking about mold is kind of what we're aiming for. And we have a whole blog on the symptoms of mold that you can see here at the bottom of the link or bottom of the slide. Okay, so kind of going into this, why would you want to test your home?
So yeah, it's important to test your home because it can be hard to move forward, right? When, if you are where you got sick or where it's keeping you sick, it's going to be hard to move forward. So past and current exposure can both cause symptoms. So just because it was in the past, it can sort of still be with you. And we'll talk about that when we get to the body piece. But, it can be stored and colonized and things like that. So mold can and often is very hidden. You can work on detoxing your body, but ongoing exposure can keep you from getting better. So it's kind of like you're just maintaining, right? It doesn't mean you can't start detox while you're in it. If you're in a place where your body will allow that, you're not so reactive and in a steady place, but it's hard to make progress when you're still in it, is what I'm saying. So cleaning up that air quality, and sometimes we can't move immediately. Maybe it takes a little bit to get to remediation. So there's steps we can take to clean up the air piece, but finding and removing mold is often the missing piece, especially if you have a lot of reactivity with mast cell. And I'll tell you, in clinic, it says 95%, I would say 99%. There is a mold piece there, past or present.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sometimes, because I see all of our clients, like the first one, right? And I talked to them about the evaluating this piece. And I had someone the other day was like, oh, do I want to open that can of worms? And I was like, I totally get it. And we may need to pause just because there's the fear factor there. And we need to do some nervous system work and be comfortable to take that next step. But ultimately, what we're aiming for here is like, we want to get that data. We want to know what that data point is and see if it's contributing to your inability to make progress on your healing. Because if the air quality is just like what Kimberly said, coming in, your body's just managing. It's never going to be able to potentially release what is stored in there because it's on a daily basis just dealing with what's coming in. So like if the air quality is bad, right, there's mold or mycotoxins in the air, we breathe them in. We want to know that because like Kimberly said, if you can't move right away, there's things that we can do to improve air quality. I see somebody here asking like, do air purifiers make a difference if you can't move? That's just one of many things that we can do to contribute to improvement of air quality. But we have to test the home first in order to know if we need to.
Right. To what degree? Because if you're in a lot of mold and you just start recirculating stuff, it's not going to make you feel much better. So it kind of depends on what's going on in your home.
Yeah. And the only way to know that is to test. So we'll talk about how we test. Okay, so what are the different mold tests that people use for the home?
So some typical ways that you can test mold are air testing, which typical mold inspectors do. Mold plates is another way. Swabs, so actually taking like a Q-tip kind of thing and swabbing it if there's visible mold. And then ERMI, which stands for the Environmental Relative Moldiness Index. Those are the variety of tests. Some are better than others, depends on what question you're asking.
Yeah. So let's go into each one a little bit. Air testing.
So air testing. So this is the typical testing we see if you call up a local mold place and they're going to come in and they're going to do a sample of air, like inside your home, outside your home. It has its place, but it often misses a lot, because if you have a waterborne mold that's hidden, that's not going to be up in the air. That's going to be behind a wall, close to the source of water, because it requires like 85% humidity in a water source. So it can miss. I find air testing can miss a lot of problems.
Yeah, I think we've had many clients who brought in mold specialists, did air testing, say that they didn't have the toxic black molds in the air, but then did an ERMI and it came back.
Yeah. So, that's so we have mold plates, right? So immunolytics is usually a place we recommend if you're going to run a mold plate. So again, realize mold plates are air testing, because it's whatever is landing. So what you're taking is that like little petri dish, you're putting it in a room, you're leaving it for like an hour, you're closing it up, wrapping it up in like tin foil, putting it aside for 5 days to see what grows. So it's only taking what's in the air. So know that. So it's less expensive, possibly, depending on how many you do, because what you would do is you would take that mold plate. If something grew within 5 days, you see anything growing, you don't know from looking at it what it is. So you would send it into a lab like immunolytics, where they would send you a report back and tell you what they found. So the pro is, in general, it can be less expensive for testing small areas or specific items like cars, or tap testing furniture or carpet or pets. The one on my pet came back pretty bad. Can be used to help narrow down results from ERMI. So sometimes like the ERMI does a big test of the house, a dust test, and you don't know where that only answers the question of, is there toxic mold here and at what levels and what kinds, but it doesn't tell you where it is. So sometimes mold plates can kind of tell you what rooms are sort of more moldier, but again, it can miss those waterborne molds like the black molds. So what is a con? Yeah, it won't pick up issues contained behind a wall. Also slightly more complicated to use, because we do at MassCell 360, we use a more stringent directions than those provided by some of the labs. And then the swabs. So this one was helpful for me, immunolytic swabs. So it's a simple, inexpensive way to test mold. Basically, they're sending like one of those long Q-tips. And if you see something that could be mold growth, you could sample that. And I did do that around a toilet on a floor that looked like it was lifting a little. I opened it slightly and just kind of sampled, sent it in, and it told me that there was a toxic kind of aspergillus growing there, which then allowed me to be like, okay, I need to get someone in here and take care of this problem. I know where the problem is and what kind of mold it is. ERMI is usually a preferred one. If somebody's looking big picture to see am I in a moldy home, and how moldy. So the one we recommend would be Envirobiomics as a lab, and it measures mold built up over time via a DNA analysis of dust. It does a qPCR test. So it basically is giving you sections. Like the first section is the toxic molds, section 1. Section 2 are common indoor house molds. I don't love the ERMI score, because you can have if you have high levels of common indoor molds and high toxigenic molds, your ERMI score is not going to be that high, because it's sort of subtracting one from the other. It's a relativity index. But so we really just look at, ERMI is interesting, but we also are then looking at what molds are coming up and at what amounts. So what are the pros? You can pick up hidden issues mold plates can't get. So you can get a fairly good snapshot of this space. The cons are fairly generalized. You still have to find the mold location. So it can be kind of annoying because it's like, okay, oh, look, I have some black mold coming in at pretty high levels. I don't know where this is. So those are the different types of home mold tests that we use.
Yeah, I think Cam, it's funny. So I have people who ask me all the time, they're like, will I ever be able to go into a moldy building again? Or like things like that. And I think Cam used the term, you're our resident mold testing expert. And it made me laugh and think about how like when you go into buildings now, you get the little hive because your body immediately tells you that's it's like you're like a walking ERMI test.
Yeah, I've been called a mold dog before, but I do think it changes over time. I had a couple of recent exposures and it did not give me hives. It was more an inflammation response in my sinuses that I didn't connect right away, but yeah, it shifted over time.
Well, and I know when we had Jessica from Mold Mentor on, she said that she has different symptoms for different types of mold. So I wonder if that's what was going on with you too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, I think I lived in mold and moved to mold. So my symptoms changed from place to place, depending on what kinds were there for sure.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk a little bit more into the ERMI since this is where we typically start.
Yeah, we usually start here with the ERMI just to get a snapshot overall of home because your dust collects over time. So generally on a standard size home, we're saying like do one kit unless you have a really large home. You could do one per floor then. That will give you a better idea of living space. So you wouldn't go into an unfinished basement and do this. We're more looking for a living space. But if you do have living space down your basement, there's a bedroom down there or, space a family room down in your basement, you would probably want to do down there as well. So, testing your whole living space. All right. So yeah, that's where we usually start and what I would do. All right. So steps to testing, doing an ERMI. So usually, you order your kit, they send you a kit. They're basically sending you a Swift. It's like a Swiffer, so it's like a dust cloth. So you're going around and you're collecting dust, and you don't want to go and collect dust from like grandma's antique piano. I've seen people do this because that's going to have some old spores, possibly from past houses and things like that. So basically you want to do more what's permanent to your house. So like a ceiling fan, tops of windows. I wouldn't recommend around windows because you don't want to get for what's coming from outside. Tops of doorways, maybe not to outside doors, but maybe indoor doors, cabinets, baseboards, a huge one. Yeah, top of refrigerator because refrigerator's probably been there, right? Unless you moved it recently from another place.
Yeah,
and it wasn't cleaned. But baseboards are huge. So dust tends to settle and mold tends to settle. Baseboards are a good place to sort of dust along. And you need you want a lot of gray dust. You want to make sure your dusting cloth is quite dirty, like you see the dust on it. Because if you don't have enough dust, you don't have enough to test well. So you won't get good test results. And then you send your kit in, you send it back. You get your results usually via email. And you want to work with someone knowledgeable around that ERMI, around what to do next.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about this, but some additional tips.
Yeah. So you don't want to clean or dust your house right before testing. You want to have, but you want to be getting sort of recent dust. If you haven't ever dusted, maybe it does make sense to do that and then have 4 weeks and have new dust.
Or if you have a cleaner who comes regularly, like maybe skip a week with them, have them not come in.
Yeah.
Or like, I tell people, I'm like, there's definitely places that the cleaner's not cleaning all the time, like tops of mirrors in the bathroom. Like most people can find dust.
Yeah. So do the dust test before you fog or mist. So if you're going to do some kind of fogging or misting, I'd recommend doing it before and then doing it, after remediation or after fogging, like a good 4 to 6 weeks. So if you're testing post remediation, let the dust settle for 4 to 8 weeks after remediation. And this is a step I see missed a lot, where people don't do a follow-up test. And it's so important just to make sure you got it all, because it is easy to miss a piece. Even the mold experts, the best mold experts, easily can miss a piece. So you just want to make sure using the sort of the same test, waiting enough to get some new dust, collecting that dust, and seeing, like, you can compare apples to apples, right? If you're the before remediation and after remediation test, and what is gone. You don't want to have like we live on Earth, so we're not going to have a 0 mold score ever. But we do need to get it to a place where you feel good and can kind of heal from. So yeah, don't rely on the score alone to say if the levels are safe or not. It's a relativity index. So, and with mast cell activation, you want lower levels of mold to be able to heal. Mm-hmm. So let's see. So yeah, reading the results. Don't go by just the HERTSMI or the ERMI scores. The HERTSMI is a subset of the 5 most toxigenic molds, which are listed on that right column there. The HERTSMI sort of gives a score for that. It's a subset of the overall ERMI. So if you order a full ERMI from EnviroBiomics, you will get the HERTSMI as part of that. I wouldn't recommend just doing the HERTSMI because you will miss all the other pieces of the full ERMI test. So I recommend ordering a full ERMI test. So what you're doing is looking at, in section 1 of the toxic molds, are there any toxic mold markers elevated, and at what amount? So it'll give you, the first column is generally like a spore equivalent measure, and then the next column, and some of the tests are different from each other, but usually gives you how many fold over what's normal. So ones that are sort of marked higher, you want to kind of pay attention to and be curious about. But these are the ones you want to be pretty careful about. Alternaria, Fusarium, Mucor, Penicillium, and then the 5 on the right. So the Aspergillus versicolor, Aspergillus penicilloides, Stachybotrys, which is a type of black mold, Chaetonium globosum, which is a black mold, and Wallemia. And those 5 on the right are the ones that make up that HERTSMI score, which is usually used to measure if you have, if it's safe for somebody with CIRS or mold toxicity to re-enter a home. Yeah. So what are the next steps after testing? So if you have mold or mystery symptoms, we do recommend working with an IEP, which is someone who's an indoor environmental professional who understands chronic illness, and specifically, hopefully somebody who's sensitive, right? They understand that. Some of the things you want to avoid for treating the mold would be ozone, bleach. You don't want to paint over mold, mold proofing paints. DIY remediation. I've seen this go really wrong for people, where they're like, oh, it's there, and they freak out and let me get at it and remove it. But when you do that, when you open up a wall or a space, you're putting those mycotoxins and spores into the air, and it can make you a lot sicker, especially those with mast cell. And ignoring minor mold. Oh, there's just a little bit here. That can be just the tip of the iceberg of what you see that might be around a shower or something like that.
Yeah. Okay, so that was a lot of information. Maybe we can see if there's any questions on testing the home first that came in. Let's see. Okay, so Laura's asking what to do. An apartment has visible black mold, landlord fixed it. So literally what we just talked about is like, did they paint over it? What did they do to fix it? But it's back, right? So this is for someone else, not her. She's asking for a friend, it seems.
Yeah, pretty typical. I mean, we see this a lot for a renter, right? Their landlord doesn't, it's not that they're trying to be mean or anything. They're just doing the typical mold remediation, which a lot of times they don't remove it. They'll just put something that kills it, like a fungicide on it. And it doesn't remove it, and it'll just keep coming back because mold, say mold is on a drywall or something like that, it has roots called hyphae, and it will root in. So if you're just killing that surface, the roots are strong, and when that kind of wears off, it'll come back even stronger. So an apartment with visible mold, that's concerning that they kind of fixed it. I'm guessing they didn't really fix the problem. and didn't fully remove it. So it is frustrating, right? Because you want it done right, so that because it can really affect your health. But yeah, we do see this common, hard to get it done right for you if you don't own.
Yeah. And I just want to say to like the landlord, like the people who are mad at the landlords for not fixing it, right? Like to give people a little bit of grace, because people do the best they can with the knowledge that they have. And so like we're all human. We all, we're all going to make mistakes at some point. If the landlord doesn't know that they're not fixing it correctly, like they're not doing it out of, to be malicious. And so what can we do to help, educate people on the proper steps of remediation? And if you're renting, can you get out of your lease, right? If they're not going to take the next steps to learn that, then what can you do to protect yourself?
Yeah, and that's what we usually recommend to clients is how can you clean up the air quality with where you are? Can you get out of your lease? And then testing before you move into a new place is huge.
Yeah.
Huge. Yeah.
Okay. Emily is saying, what do you say about mold dogs trained in mold? Do those detect mold behind walls? What about the tools to detect damp, like the moisture monitors?
Yeah. So mold dogs are only as good as that mold dog, right? So some mold dogs are better than others. I think once you run an ERMI and you know there's an issue, you don't know where it is, a mold dog may be a good resource to help find it. Mm-hmm. At least a really well-trained mold dog. I think they're pretty amazing, and have seen some people get clarity if you can't find it. I would start with an IEP first to do the visual piece, but you may be able to bring a mold dog in at some point. And then tools, a good IEP should be detecting, seeing what's going on, where issues may lay in the building, and then kind of like testing those areas, because they'll do more detailed testing then, including doing moisture meters. Even I've seen them use like a pin, like almost a pin against the wall, and get an air sample from behind the wall directly. So things like that. They have all kinds of tools, and I would recommend using a professional to do it, just because we're not trained. I've heard of people going out and getting their own moisture meter and things like that, which isn't a bad idea, right? If you're trying to suss out an issue, but this really requires, if you have a mold problem, getting a professional in there to look at the whole scope of what's going on.
Yeah, so we're often recommending the ERMI first to evaluate the air, the home quality, right? And then we're often referring out to IEPs from our clinic, because our MassCell 360 as a health consulting clinic is helping educate and guide people on removing mold from the body. And obviously the environmental piece is important part to understand what's going on internally, but then we refer out to experts on the environmental piece, because that's not our area of expertise. And so just like what Kimberly was saying is like, you could easily piecemeal all of this together through your own information, but if it's not your area of expertise, there is room for that human error, whereas an IEP is a trained professional in how to use those tools and equipment, and they may bring in a mold dog for you, or they may do all that monitoring for you. So, what's the price of doing something wrong because you have to do it over and over again without all the information, versus paying a little bit more to a professional who's going to be able to do it for you and give you the right information on what to do next. Okay. Robin is saying, we were advised to do a HERTSMI ERMI without cleaning first. Now we have the results with some rooms being problematic. And then I think the rest of her question is here. If you don't clean beforehand, how do you know if it's an active mold issue or old dust?
And that's possible. So know that if things weren't cleaned up after a mold issue, that might be past, like if there might be an active, there may be still the remnants of all that from before. So it just depends on where you are in the process and what's going on with you. But yes, if it hasn't been cleaned up and there was a past like water issue and it was never cleaned up, you can be reading that because you don't know the age of the dust. Unless you have deep cleaned, wait 4 to 6 weeks, 8 weeks maybe, and then redust. Retest.
Okay. Okay. Let's get back to our presentation, and then we can take some more questions at the end. All right, so why should you test your body for mold?
Yeah, so I think it's really important to test your body for mold, and that's where I started for me too, like kind of like, oh, do I have mold or not? And know when you test your body for mold, it's either present or past. It can be from the past, kind of still living in you, and that's where the making sure you have a clean environment next, right? To make sure that you can detox once you know about the issue. So yeah, not addressing the mold toxicity can keep you from healing, right? Can keep us stuck. So many people don't know they've been exposed. Mycotoxins are stored in tissues for years. I would even say decades, even. Like if we haven't actively sort of cleared those, they can store in the body, especially if we were exposed to a lot of them when we were younger. Mold can colonize, grow inside you, not just pass through. So it can colonize. We see it typically in the sinuses, and in the gut, typically anywhere where you have mucosal lining, it can kind of it can take root there. And different binders target different mycotoxins. So testing, you would want to run a mycotoxins test to see what's coming up. What kind of binders do I need? What kinds of things do I need? Yeah. Versus I have seen people come in and say, oh yeah, I tested for mold and my practitioner told me to do 6 months of this binder and now I'm good, but we never retested. In clinic, we retest once you're on binders, we retest typically around every 6 months or so, just to see how things are detoxing. And even when you get to like a low level beyond present, and that's never zero because there's some always in our environment, and the tests are calibrated that way, you would still want to retest, like it, stay on those binders a little longer. We just want to make sure we clear it, just so it's not an ongoing issue lifelong for you.
Yeah. And I think that like the mycotoxins versus mold piece gets confusing when people are thinking about the body, because we're testing the mycotoxins, like how your body's metabolizing those mycotoxins. And Kimberly mentioned a lot of the sinus and gut is where those things are colonized. Mycotoxins are also fat soluble biotoxins. And so they can pass like blood-brain barrier. Your brain is really fatty. And that's where we see a lot of those cognitive type symptoms coming up for people too. So just knowing that these things are circulating your body potentially. And so we want to get an idea of what's going on. And so just like every other test that we do, any type of functional test that you may have had done, it's a snapshot in time of what your body is excreting at that moment too. I think that's, just an important reminder as we think about these tests. Okay, so like I just mentioned, we're testing urinary mycotoxins. So Kimberly can go into a little bit more about the testing.
Yeah. So urinary mycotoxins is how we do that. We're looking, basically we're looking at so it is a urine test. So it's measuring what you're detoxing and kind of at what level. And typically, even if we are in mold, if we're not detoxing real well, those levels might be like low or equivocal. And I've had clients say, oh yeah, I was told because it was low, I didn't have much mold. They just weren't detoxing them well. So usually I see the second test after we get on binders go up quite a bit. And sometimes people get nervous about that, like, oh no, I have more mold. And it's like, no, we're detoxing more mold. So that's a urine mycotoxin. There's also, we run an organic acids test, and that has a section on with a lot of fungal markers. So we're looking at those fungal markers to see if that can be a possible sign of colonization. It isn't as every single marker or fungal marker you could have, but it gives a good idea of if there's some colonization going on. And blood tests are possible for people who are really sensitive and really aren't testing anything on urinary mycotoxins, but they know they've been living in mold. So like doing a mold antibody test sometimes can give some clarity if somebody's really looking for answers.
So we recommend the real-time lab mycotoxin test.
Yeah, so that's our top recommendation. We find it to be the most sensitive, and we are sensitive people who often aren't detoxing really well. So we find it to be most. I have seen other people come in with other mycotoxin testing, and they're like, look, no mold, look, no mold. Then we run a real time, and there it is. It's just a little bit more sensitive of a test. And it's also available internationally. And I think it's available in every state in the US, just depending on how you order it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even in New York, I know New York sometimes has trouble with the testing. You can order it from New York. So know that. And it's something you can order and run yourself. You may need help then once you have that to interpret that. So know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So steps to testing. So you would just go to the site, order your kit. The company will send you your kit. You're prepared. Then you're doing your preparation. So for urine mycotoxin, at least for real-time labs, you're going to want to do some gentle provocation. We'll talk about here in a minute. You're going to collect your sample, which is always first morning urine, and you're just then sending, following the instructions. I can't remember if this one you need to overnight freeze, but usually you do. And then you're sending in your tests for results, getting those results back electronically, usually, from the company, and then working with the knowledgeable practitioner. And what do those results mean for me?
So to prepare for the test, like Kimberly mentioned, doing some level of provocation, because we have so many different levels of sensitivities in not just the clients we work with in clinic, but like those of you on this call today will vary, person to person, what you're able to tolerate to prepare. But generally for 3 days before testing, if you are on any binders, we recommend stopping those. And like Kimberly mentioned, we have clients who retest every 6 months once on binders, right? So you would temporarily stop those for 3 days. And then we recommend a gentle provocation. So only ever as tolerated. We never want you to provoke your body into feeling worse than you need to. So usually some of our clients are only doing like a lymphatic massage on themselves the night before a test. And, a lymphatic massage is actually very gentle touch. I tell people, I'm like, it's only as much pressure as you need to like hold it like a coin to your skin. You're not really like rubbing your body down or having your partner give you a deep tissue massage.
Lymph is light touch.
Yeah.
Light touch.
Yeah. And then we like to provoke some sort of sweating. So this could be if you have access to a sauna, but if you're really, really sensitive to heat, which so many people in our community are, that's when you would do more of the lymphatic massage. But if you do have a little bit more energy and can tolerate heat, you may do a hot bath or some exercise for those 3 days leading up to it.
And that's just all is tolerated. Like I was someone who was sensitive to heat, so lymphatic massage is probably all I would do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So collecting that first morning urine and then shipping that out. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I think we can kind of speed through that a little bit, keeping the touch light. You can do pretty much any YouTube video. If you go on and look up lymphatic massage, find one that resonates with you. And if you feel worse, even during that, then just stop, right?
Yep.
Never do anything that's going to make you feel worse. And like what we said, only as tolerated for the sweating, maybe 10, 30 minutes if you sweat well. That's also something that so many people in our community don't even tolerate or even do, which tells us that those detox pathways are shut down because sweating is one way that your body detoxes.
So, but just a warm bath even can just be helpful, gentle provocation.
Yeah, or shower too, because we have some people who don't have bathtubs anymore in their homes as well. So. Okay, so how do they read the results?
Yeah, so reading your results. So a not present result doesn't always mean no mold toxicity. So you need to kind of look at the full picture, kind of like what are your symptoms, kind of what's going on. Do you know you were mold exposed? What's the results from your house coming back at? If your body can't excrete those mycotoxins yet, the test may be negative even though the mold is present. And it's very common in those of us with mast cell because our bodies aren't detoxing super well, often in that cell danger response, right, and just not detoxing well. So tests often come back positive once those detox pathways are supported to begin to open up. That's what I said, like usually people will come in if you're stressed and all of that, may not be detoxing well. Those might be low level. And, you don't want to, even if it's low present, and I saw somebody say that, that's present. Just because it's not at a high level, you're probably just not detoxing real well. And somebody else was asking, what is that test for the antibodies in the blood? It's called Mycotoxin. So if things are sort of negative and just not adding up with symptoms too, and environmental coming back positive, Mycotoxin might shed some of that, a light on some of that.
So that's what she's asking right here.
Mm-hmm. There's a mold doctor, Dr. Campbell. Yeah, yeah. I mean, everybody has different ways of doing it. This is how we do it. Yeah. So
my Mycolab can be test is the Mycolab.
What was that?
I think Dr. Campbell's test is the Mycolab.
Yeah, it is. It is the Mycolab. That's his test. Yeah. Like we usually don't start there because that can also miss, like, that's just measuring antibodies. It's not measuring mycotoxins. It's just,
and then it doesn't tell us which binders we may need. So,
right.
You know. Right. Okay. So next steps after testing.
So after testing, right? So we know, say we know that mold is present either from body testing, home testing. So stabilization is what we're working on and what we talk about here. So nervous system work is huge. So know that. A good place to start, something you can do every day, starting a nervous system daily practice. Mast cell stabilizing, what does that look like? For some people, it's meds as a bridge. For some others who can handle supplements, it could be mast cell stabilizing supplements, things like that. Daily bowel movements is huge because that's your phase 3 detox and how you're going to clear a lot of mycotoxins. So working toward daily bowel movements is a lot of work that we do on the front end around stabilizing. If you have any constipation, you cannot onboard binders because it'll just make it worse. Mm-hmm. And then lots of lifestyle supports, right? Doing all kinds of cleanup, taking away any other things that might be triggering you, whether, cleaning up our, water, products that you use every day, food for sure, cleaning up food, lifestyle, if that's something you haven't done yet. And then we move on to, once we have daily bowel movement, gentle and targeted detox, assuming that you're able to onboard things.
So just a note on that, like, we're, at the bottom, you can see the step-by-step detox course, right? We have a course that walks you through exactly kind of how to do the testing. If you have questions and things like that go further into those pieces, and like how to implement once you get your test results back. That course can be found at mastcell360.com/mold-course. So I just want to let you know that there's a lot of assets that will help you even during stabilization, like that are mentioned in that course, right? Because we want to make sure that you're implementing the things so that you can move on to the next piece. And I'll share a little bit more at the end. We can answer questions about the course, but this is the best price. We're putting it on sale for the best price that we've ever sold this course for. You get lifetime access. So anytime we make updates, you will get automatic access to those updates. And that's one of the reasons why we're putting it on sale, because we hope to update it in the very near future. So this is the best time to buy it. The basic course is going to be $99 with coupon, and the advanced course is going to be $399 with the coupon. So stick around to the end. I'll give you those coupon codes. Okay, so like I mentioned, the Precision Mold Masterclass covers testing, gentle detox, and support. I see a question. Let's see. How do we find, oh, not that one. Where'd your question go? There was somebody who was asking, how do we know which binders to use for which mycotoxins? That is absolutely in the course. So again, like the $99 basic course, for those who are just looking how to implement this on their own, the basic course is pretty sufficient. The advanced course provides some additional information with things like when the course was run live. There's Q&A, most frequently asked questions, included in the back. It has case study reviews. So this is really for somebody who wants more of that in-depth exploration into the topic, who really wants to know it all. The advanced course is great, but the basic course will cover what you need. Everything on this slide has information on troubleshooting, It has a printable workout. It has a bonus on what to do if you have a dog, right? How can you detox your dog? Because so many of us are living with pets in these homes and notice that their pets are getting more allergies or, things that are alluding us to it's not just the humans, right, in the home who can be affected by the mold.
Yeah, and sometimes the pets are getting sick first because they're tinier and they're there all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of look at that. Kids and pets get sick sooner. They're like, because toxicity is dosage, right, by weight. And so think about body size in relation to toxin exposure in the air.
Yeah. Okay. So if you think that this is like the best next step, you're ready for it, I just want to throw up the bonus code. It's bonus 50, and this again will work to get $50 off either the advanced or the basic course. And you can, let's see, again, find that link at massl360.com/mold-course. All right, so let's go back to some of our questions because we have some great questions coming in. We're going to be focusing on questions that are on the topic of today's live, which is mold testing in the body and home. And please understand that we're unable to answer in-depth personal health questions. And if you asked your question earlier, our staff behind the scenes have been marking those, so don't throw it up again if you've already asked your question. Okay. Let's see. If work had mold and house didn't, would you not be worse at work? Same no matter where you are. Do best by seawater. You've had some great months, bad months, living and working in the same places.
Yeah, and some people notice a difference and some don't when they're home or not. Also realize you could be colonized and then it's, and have the mold toxicity piece and just might not feel great all the time, right?
Or if you have better months when you're feeling like there's less environmental allergens, like less pollen in the air, or when you are at that seawater place, if you have the ability to go on vacation, you feel better because you're less stressed and not at work during those times, if stress is a huge trigger for you.
Yeah. One thing I noticed was seasonal, right? So I got sicker in the fall. Yeah. And that's like mold season, right? But also the house is getting closed up. Mm-hmm. And
that's fresh air.
The air conditioner is getting turned over to heat. And when if it's in your HVAC, which it was in mine, that was one of the places, there was condensation right from the AC, and it was happy all summer. And then the windows were open in the early fall, and then when the heat came on, that colony dried up and then was on this, what I call the spore superhighway, the HVAC system, and was kind of spread throughout the house because it was drying up, didn't have a water source anymore, and the spores were going off looking for water source, right?
Yeah. And also the idea of sinus colonization, like you become the moldy building. So if mold,
wherever you go, there it is.
Yeah. So like if you knew that your workplace had mold, but your home doesn't mean your body might not be experiencing some level of toxicity there still. Okay. Elaine is saying, if you suspect mold under walk-in shower, under tile floor, can that be remediated, or do you need to rip out the shower tile and fix the floor beneath? So this is where an IEP would be able to better answer that question than us, because it depends on.
Chances are, I mean, if it is there, if it's confirmed there, yeah, that's probably going to need to come up, but it would need to come up under containment. Because if you don't have containment, you're spreading all the mycotoxins and spores everywhere when you open that up. So containment with a proper remediator after the IEP is what you want.
Yeah. Loggie's asking, was mold so much of an issue until there was Wi-Fi? I've heard this before, and I don't have any studies to back it up. There may be some out there, but I haven't looked that deep into it.
Yeah, I think it's more theories than definite scientific research, but it makes sense, right? How does mold communicate? It communicates through these like little electrical impulses to each other, to other kinds of molds, and makes it produce more mycotoxins because it thinks it needs to be in defense. So there is a theory that that things got worse after Wi-Fi. I would also argue that our buildings have gotten tighter,
and
less breathable. After what happened in the 70s with energy issues and things like that, everybody was all about energy efficiency, which made the houses tighter, made it the buildings not as breathable.
Steve is asking, is mold from a vehicle brought into indoor space from clothing or shoes? It absolutely can be. Okay, so how do we find a list of remediators? We typically recommend the ISEAI list. If Zach or Cam can throw that into the comments. Also, Michael Schrantz is someone we've had on our show before. He's a brilliant IEP. Mold Mentor is another one that we recommend.
And John Banta is another too. John Banta. Those are more remote people you can consult who then may have resources in your area, but can kind of help you troubleshoot.
Yeah. Steve's also asking, what does fogging or misting mean when we were talking about it? So you didn't want to do the ERMI right after fogging.
Yeah. So sometimes people do, fogging doesn't remove mold. So know that. So fogging is a temporary fix. And sometimes it is used by people who maybe are renting or in a dorm or something like that and want to clean up the air quality. So they'll fog periodically and then, wipe everything down and vacuum and do like a deep clean to kind of clean up the air quality. I also have seen it used really well after remediation because it, things can still be in the air, it can kind of fog and then do a deep particle clean afterward. That's kind of what we mean by that.
Yeah.
But you want to use, if you have mast cell activation, you want to use a fog or a mist by something like EC3 or a BioBalance or a company like that has the non-toxic citrus-based ones.
Yeah. And Karen, along those lines, Karen's asking, like, what are the cleaning products to use? So fogging and misting with products like EC3 or BioBalance are temporary solutions, not a replacement for remediation. And we also have a whole blog post, like if you're still in mold, definitely recommend checking out like mastcell360.com/in mold blog post, since today's topic is really kind of what to do if you're how to test, right? But we're not really going into the nitty gritties of how to clean and clean up that environment. We have a lot of free resources on our website about those topics though.
I will tell you, bleach actually makes the problem worse.
Yeah,
it does. Because it makes the mold angry and it produces more mycotoxins. So it depends on what you're trying to clean but we recently did a Facebook Live with EC3, which I thought was really helpful for maintaining the house. But it depends on what you're trying to clean.
Yeah, so a lot of questions. I'm just going to generally answer a few questions. Like, people are asking most effective ways to remediate. Is there a link to find the IEP? How to mold expert in? We can't answer those questions because we're not indoor environmental professionals. So definitely check out the link that our team's putting in to find an IEP so that you can take those next steps for your individual situations, because everybody's mold problem is going to be different. I think everyone's internal mold problem is different. Everyone's external mold, maybe if you have 3 people in the home and they're all exhibiting similar symptoms, you could, do 3 for 1. But in this case, we don't know your individual health cases, so we can't really say what those next steps are on your individual homes for and how to remediate. Okay. Yeah, but I think the best place to start, if you know you're in mold, the best place to start would be reading our blog post that I just shared the link for, like the in mold blog post. Get some ideas of where to start. If you don't know whether or not you're in mold, the best place to start would be that ERMI.
Either body or ERMI.
Yeah.
Or both.
Yeah. Let's see. So Louise, I mentioned that mycotoxins can pass the blood-brain barrier, right? How do you get them out? We use those targeted binders. So you would want to do the mycotoxin test to see if you have mycotoxins in your body. we can't say whether or not you have them in your brain. But for some people who have a lot of cognitive symptoms, that may be what's going on. But we can't say for sure if you have mycotoxins in your brain, just that they pass the blood-brain barrier. So I would start with the real-time lab test, see what mycotoxins you have in your body so that you can use targeted binders to target them and help get them out. And that, if you need a place to start, the basic mold course is a great place. Kimberly, Teresa's asking if we use glutathione.
So glutathione can be used. It's all about tolerance and what you tolerate. So I didn't put it on there just because most people are pretty sensitive to glutathione. If you're not detoxing well, it's going to push on your detox pathways that aren't efficient. So I definitely don't recommend and this is what I did, right? So 1,000 milligrams of glutathione, and I threw myself into a 6-month mast cell flare. So know that. So go low and slow if you do glutathione. I like S-acetyl glutathione instead of liposomal. And I think starting low and slow. But if you're somebody who is sensitive to foods and supplements and things like that, I think you can get just as good a test just doing some of the basic, a hot bath, lymphatic, things like that. It just all depends. But if you're somebody who is like, I'm already on glutathione every day, then great. Yeah. You're probably fine with that provocation.
Yeah. We just left it off because of the sensitivities. And this is for informational purposes. We don't know your case, but as Kimberly said, if you're already on it and under guidance from a practitioner, then you can definitely use that as part of your provocation.
Yeah.
Okay. CIRS through Dr. D in Colorado, but I really think now that they're exploring the CIRS, they also have MCAS, only reacting in the house, nowhere else. Doing primal trust H1, H2 really help. There's the hyperbaric
oxygen therapy. Yeah. I wouldn't, depends on how sensitive you are, right? Typically I don't see it, we use it in client because it can stimulate things a little too much if you suspect you have mast cell activation. There's a lot of overlap with CIRS and mast cell activation, right? So everybody with mast cell activation pretty much has Mold Toxicity CIRS piece.
Yeah.
Some are super sensitive and cannot handle some of the typical CIRS protocols. So we have a lot of clients who started with some CIRS practitioners and just couldn't do the protocol, right? So we worked with them to try to, and sometimes they're still working with that CIRS practitioner, but we're making it sort of more mast cell friendly for them. And sometimes, the CIRS protocols can be a bit hard on the, some of the binders they use and things like that. Yeah, we tend to do a gentler approach to detox.
Yeah, but I do want to acknowledge that he's doing primal trust.
Yeah, that's great. And H1, H2 blockers, absolutely. That's starting to get some mast cell stabilizing on.
Yeah, and if you're only reacting in the house, then have you done the mold piece of the house?
Of the house, yeah, the environmental. Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see. Can a fungal nail infection affect the body?
Yeah, that kind of shows that you probably have some kind of systemic fungal infection going on. So yes. Yeah. And it could just be seen by coming out through a toenail or a fingernail or something like that. But usually that tells us that you probably have some fungal colonization going on.
Yeah. Here we go. Simone's asking, to elevated Arabinose and oat testing may be a sign of mold too.
So elevated Arabinose is typically yeast, and it's typically Candida. And yes, it's the most common one I see elevated because, it just the gut gets thrown off by the mold exposure. And Candida can take root in there, in the gut and kind of colonize. So can it be a sign? It can be a sign. But you can also have Candida overgrowth and not have had mold exposure too, if you're someone who ate a lot of sugar and things like that.
We see it commonly hand in hand.
Yeah.
Candida overgrowth and mold toxicity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you say the name of the blood test one more time? So that's MyMyco. That's not typically where we start.
My Myco Labs, yeah.
My Myco Labs, I think, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
See?
There's a question about foods. Do you see that one? Are there foods that can add mold toxicity to be avoided, such as fermented foods? So yes, absolutely. There is some. Obviously, you want to avoid, foods that you saw that got moldy, like when cheese gets moldy or fruit gets moldy. Toss it out, the whole thing. Don't just cut a piece off because it roots in. So it's a good idea to throw out any moldy food. But yes, there's typical crops that can be more that can add to the mold toxicity piece, such as coffee, grapes, peanuts, nuts in general, some more moldy than others. Definitely fermented foods, alcohol, especially wine, are some of the things. But those are all avoided by following like our low histamine list. We take out all the moldy foods.
Yeah, like the fermented foods, right? We take those out because they're high histamine and can contribute to that mast cell activation. But the fermented foods aren't necessarily moldy. All right, let's see.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much. We are actually going to take a week break next week, so we won't be on.
Somebody's asking, what is CIRS?
What is CIRS? Yeah.
Chronic inflammatory response syndrome. Basically means mold toxicity. What mold does to your body is what CIRS is.
Someone use.
Have you seen
one more question?
Real time, get less accurate results. Well, it's not that it's less accurate. Just I feel like it can be missed in some of the other mycotoxin tests, in especially sensitive mast cell people. It's just that real time lab is just a more sensitive test. I mean, obviously, if you had a test done and it's positive with another, and it's possible, we do see that. Somebody run Vibrant and it come up positive. I mean, that's a positive mold test.
Right. It's not inaccurate. It's just that we find real time to be most accurate. So like Mosaic is one of the other common ones. We used to recommend Great Plain Labs as well as, in the mold test, regroup. In the mold course, you'll see that we used to recommend Great Plain Labs and real time because some was more sensitive for the other. Great Plain Labs was acquired by Mosaic, and we noticed that we were getting more inaccurate results from Mosaic when they were from the Mosaic test. So we switched to just starting clients with real-time lab. So if you're going to choose one or the other, we recommend real-time lab to start with.
Yep. And every practitioner is going to be different on that. But for us here in clinic, that's what we do.
Yeah. Okay. So just want to throw that back up on the screen one more time. mastcell360.com/mold.course. And your coupon code for, I think it's, someone might need to correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's valid until the end of next week or the end of the month. So be sure to jump on that to get your $50 off. And if you are kind of like overwhelmed by all of this, don't learn well by doing like courses, and you would much rather prefer to have one-on-one support, we do offer that in the clinic. And you can learn about that at mastcell360.com/clinic and how we can support you there. For long-term mold support, that the best route to go for that is our traditional comprehensive option, which is our advanced track. So just keep that in mind. If you are thinking about applying, you can learn more at mastcell360.com/clinic. Kimberly, any last words for our group?
Yeah. Test, don't guess. Stop getting stuck in the loop of like, what's wrong? It might just give a lot of clarity. And I know it's kind of like nerve-wracking to think about testing mold. And I was like, it does feel like a little bit of a Pandora's box sometimes, but it's better to know because it's something then you can address.
Yeah.
And get to feeling better.
Yeah, check out the mold course, check out some of the blogs we shared today, and just take one step at a time. Like, it's so easy to get like decision paralysis, feeling overwhelmed. If you suspect mold in the home, or you don't know why your symptoms, you've never tested your body and you haven't gotten to the root cause of your symptoms, then maybe you test body first, right? Or if you have visible mold in the home, you test home first to see, and then maybe you go to an IEP, right? So just think about your individual case, because we don't know your whole story, right? That takes a lot of time and effort to sit down and listen to, and we do that. We offer that, and if you're looking for that level of support, we'd be happy to help you. But if you're kind of just like, what do I do next? Ask yourself that, and just pick one thing to do first.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, everyone. Thanks for being with us today, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.